Everybody, good morning. Good morning. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, X, Instagram. Comments on. I think we're good to go. I think we are good to go. Maybe find my notes. All right, everybody, here we are, April 25, 2025. No, is that right? Yes, it is. April 25, 2025, episode 345. Welcome to Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. Let me just make sure we're good on Instagram. Hey, Ashley, thanks for joining us and doing the sound check-in on Instagram. Who you cheering for in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Hockey, everybody. I've got the Leafs and I've got the Panthers, mostly the Panthers, but I grew up a Leafs fan. So, and both my teams won last night, so I'm pretty happy. Are you looking for a business opportunity? Would you like a business opportunity in Seattle? In Seattle, the city has put out a RFP, a request for proposal. They have a budget of $500,000 for park improvement, a particular park. And the RFP is they are looking for, quote, public masturbation deterrent infrastructure. Public masturbation deterrent infrastructure. So I guess we know what's going on in Seattle in that particular park. And then that raises the question, what sort of infrastructure is going to deter this particular issue of public masturbation? And well, I didn't have an answer for that. I don't know what you're going to build. But Scott Adams did this morning. I liked it a lot. He suggested a statue of Hillary Clinton. Could be effective. Could be effective. Not much going on in the markets this morning. Everything's down. Saudi, I guess the only interesting thing going on is Saudi Arabia is pushing for more production from OPEC, which would mean more oil, which means lower prices. Why? Well, I think we saw this in 2015 when the Trump administration the first time was trying to increase domestic oil production. The Saudis tried to kill the price because, if you get down below $60, you're going to put a lot of pressure on US and Canadian producers. And they, their cost is really low in Saudi Arabia and in most of OPEC. So they can afford to do that. And then they perhaps lose market share through this whole initiative, which is what happened in 2015. Anyways, they're looking to drive oil prices down. That would be great for the economy, but not so good for energy producers in North America. As I said, crude this morning was 61.97 when I looked. That was about an hour ago. However, not quite the low for the year, but it's pretty low. pretty low. Stocks were down, as I said. Bitcoin's up. Google up 2% because they had a great earnings release last night, and that earnings release was manufactured with a non-operating gain. If they didn't have that, they would have missed it. But still, the market seems happy. All of that kind of this morning. All right, what else have we got going on here? I'm in Calgary this week, heading home right after this. Well, that's not true, but I'm heading home in a few hours. I'm about a 3-hour drive from Calgary, Alberta, where I am right now. And I've been meeting with lenders all week, advisors, entrepreneurs. It's been a good sweep through this city. And the one thing I've found out is that I've been saying for months now that Carney is going to win the Canadian federal election. Everybody felt like the Conservatives would win. It's obvious. Poilievre had a 20-point lead. I said no over Trudeau. I said no. Liberals are going to do the hot swap, and they're going to win because the Conservatives are going to screw it up. And everybody in Alberta thought I was nuts. And now on this sweep through Calgary, I'm getting a lot of I can't believe Carney's going to win. I can't believe it. That's what's going to happen. And they're right. That is what. So the realization is starting to happen, and everybody's in shock. You're going through the 3 to 5 stages of healing here with denial, anger, all that sort of stuff. And that's what's going on here. We've got past the denial. Why are the Conservatives going to lose? Well, because the Conservative campaign, as I said, has been the very definition of incompetence, proving once again that Conservatives at large, and particularly in Canada, are so obviously right in their own minds. They're so self-righteous, and the Liberals are so bad in the minds of Conservatives that the Conservatives feel like they don't actually have to campaign. They don't have to provide any leadership. All they have to do is point a finger at a Conservative, and that's the entire campaign. At a Liberal, and that's the entire campaign. And you've seen this. You see this all over the world. It was true in the U.S. as well. Very often, the Republican campaign is, how could you possibly vote for that other person? That's their whole vision, and it does not work. It works a little bit. When you're in opposition, it works well, but it does not provide leadership, and that's what you need to win. And the Poilievre campaign has been the most incompetent campaign I have ever seen in all of my years. I'll remind you, they released their platform after 40% of the votes have already been cast. And after that, the day after that, the Conservatives come out with their platform. Why? Because they don't think their platform's important. They think this is all about how bad Mark Carney and the Liberals are, and they are wrong, and they are going to lose. As a reminder, I'm not saying they're wrong that he's bad, by the way. He's obviously bad, and it's obviously going to be a disaster for Canada and for Canadians, but that's not how you win elections. As a reminder, over the past decade, Canada has experienced the weakest performance in GDP per capita among advanced economies. I think it's 37 advanced economies. Canada is where? 37th place. Didn't beat anybody. I think there was some story I saw where they were perhaps ahead of Luxembourg. Between 2014 and 2024, Canada's real GDP per capita grew by just 1.1%. Over that decade, 1.1%, ranking it as the worst performer among 37 major economies in a recent analysis done by the OECD. There you go. Only Luxembourg was worse. So there, I guess we were 36 out of 37. And this is all through the Liberal years under Trudeau, as advised economically by Carney. Let's give him another chance. That's an awesome idea. Canada's GDP per capita, which was 80.4% of the US level in 2012. Okay, so you take your average or medium, whatever, midpoint American wealth and compare that to the Canadian, and the Canadian was at 80.4% of the US. I guess it's not a wealth test, but an earnings test, a GDP test, but 80.4 of the US. And a lot of that is going to be foreign currency determined, what the value of the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar and vice versa. But anyways, it used to be 80.4% and it's declined to 72.3% in 2022. And I've said this to Canadians before. It's shocking. Look at, I live a privileged life. I've been successful. Um, Things go really well. I've lived in many parts of the world, including in the US. But I've said to Canadians now for 5, 6, 7 years, it's shocking to me when I go to Miami, speak at conferences, hang out with friends, do business, same in New York. It is shocking to me the difference of wealth there compared to anywhere in Canada, perhaps with the exception of downtown Toronto. Like, it's just shocking. It never used to be that way. It used to be very, very similar, and now it's nowhere close. And that's because of the Trudeau regime, uh, as advised by Carney. That's what's going on. As of 2024, Canada's GDP per capita remains no higher than it was 9 years ago, indicating a prolonged period of stagnation. You think this trend will continue? In fact, it's going to get worse under a Carney administration. What are you going to do about that if you are a business owner or investor? You better start thinking. You better start thinking about that. Meanwhile, Maxime Bernier, haven't talked about him in a while. If you go back on the Martinis with Scott platform on YouTube, you'll see an interview with Maxime when he started the People's Party of Canada, the Liberation Party, way back when. I used to know Maxime pretty well, sort of lost touch with him. But he started, I knew him when he was in the Conservative Party. And then, of course, when he left that and had a tantrum, left the Conservative Party and started the People's Party of Canada. And anyways, he was posting on X, coming fresh off his Alex Jones interview. Why is that a good idea? I mean, I would do an Alex Jones interview just because I think it was fun. But I don't know if you're in the middle of a political campaign, if that makes any sense at all. No word on whether he had his tinfoil hat. So he's coming off this Alex Jones interview. There's a post on X, and he shows a picture from the Canadian Globe and Mail that says that, basically says that Poilievre is rushing resources into his own riding because he's going to lose his riding, and therefore he won't even be a member of Parliament. And Maxime's post says it's over. Poilievre won't be the next prime minister. He may even lose his seat. He's bungled a 20-point lead because he was unable to differentiate himself from Carney and offer a truly conservative alternative. Is that true? Is this about conservatism versus liberalism? No, this is about, he didn't release a platform. He didn't step up and become a leader in times of crisis, in times of trouble, in times of transition. You need to lead. People need to be led. They're begging to be led. Businesses are begging, are in great need of leadership. You can't just say, oh my goodness, everything's bad. That is not a platform. Maxime goes on to say, now you have an important decisions to make that would determine if we have a true conservative, libertarian, and populist revival in Canada in the coming years or not. And of course, he's referring to donations to the PPC. Do you think? Do you think we have a populist revival in Canada? He's got about 1% of the vote. In fact, that's what he predicts here somewhere in this post. You can either waste your vote on fake conservative losers who are going to spend the coming years debating if they. Maxime Bernier loves to pretend he's Trump. I don't know where he picks up this from, but it doesn't work for him, because when Trump says, oh, y'all losers, that's authentic. That's actually who it is. It is not who Bernier is. I don't know if he writes this himself or he's got some consultants who tries to steal the language. It just comes across as fake and silly, frankly, which is why this party is not successful. Conservative losers who are going to spend the coming years debating if they should be moving even more to the left next time, with Doug Ford as their next leader. Or you can contribute to making sure the PPC survives this election and is there over the next 4 years to continue to push the Overton window in the right direction with its perfect common sense platform. You losers, our platform's perfect. This trying to emulate Trump in language, it just does not work for him at all, but it makes me laugh. Here we go. He says that he even admits in his post that the PPC is going to get 1 to 2% of the vote, and that's it. This whole PPC thing, the Liberation Party in Canada, is a failed political experiment. I applaud On my interview on the Martinez with Scott channel with Maxime, when he founded that party, I referred to him as a political entrepreneur, and I believe that to be true. He took a risk. He was within, a handful of votes of becoming the conservative leader when he lost to Andrew Scheer in sketchy situations, in a sketchy situation. So he left and he started PPC, and that was a risk. That was good for him. But of course, Maxime is a great fundraiser, and having his own party was a great way for him to continue to travel the country and raise money. That wasn't going to happen if he stayed at the Conservative Party. So I think that's what it was all about. He was very appreciative of that idea of him being a political entrepreneur. I think it's a failed experiment at this point. So, Globe and Mail, National Bank of Canada Chief Executive Officer Laurent Ferrier, I don't know how to say this, Ferreira, says the next Prime Minister should overhaul the federal emissions cap and impact assessment on energy and natural resources. So the important part about this is the regulation on new projects, natural resource projects, energy, anything, resources, critical minerals, everything. And just like in the US, just like all over the world, when the left side of the political spectrum is in charge, what they've started to do, or they have been doing for quite some time, is just using regulation to kill an industry, right? Think about the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris in the US. No, we're not against fracking. You're giving a political speech in Pennsylvania. You're not against fracking, but you've issued so many regulations that you can't possibly frack. It's impossible. Same with the coal industry. Only Obama was on us that we're just going to kill the coal industry, and he did that. And he did that not by passing legislation to say you're not allowed to be in the coal business. Instead, what he did is you just made the regulation regime impossible to navigate. And that just happens all over the world. And that's what's happened in Canada. And that's why our GDP sucks. And that what did we decide? 36 out of 37 on the GDP growth of modern economic economies. As Canada grapples with the threat of a recession and Trump wages a trade war, the National Bank CEO, whose name I cannot pronounce, said the country's biggest risk is complacency in failing to address the, quote, excessive regulation and oversight, end quote. This was in Calgary, where I am right now, last night at the shareholders meeting, which I did not attend, but this is in the Globe and Mail. Bill C-69, which requires the resource projects be assessed for environmental, health, social, economic impacts, and respect the rights of Indigenous people, and the emissions caps rates are not effective in their current forms. No, they are effective. They absolutely are effective. That is that was CEO speak. They're absolutely effective because their intent is to kill the projects. The intent is not to regulate the projects for economic impacts and environmental health. The intent is to kill the projects through regulation, and they have been highly effective, and they will continue to be highly effective. National Bank CEO says this is about building infrastructure in our country, whether it's renewable or oil or gas. It's a very big impediment to economic development and building infrastructure right here in Canada. We hear it from our clients constantly. We see it in our numbers. He says he's been president for 3.5 years, and 90% of everything that we do in renewable energy infrastructure is in the United States. We don't do things in Canada anymore, and that's correct. I've been saying on this Mornings with Scott show now for months that the answer to Canada, we just been given a gift by the Trump administration. They've torn off the Band-Aid with this 51st state talk, and now is the time for Canadians to come together, eliminate interprovincial trade barriers as much as possible, and invest in infrastructure for energy and resource projects, transportation infrastructure, value-added infrastructure to do our own processing more than we do here to add value to the minerals and to the energy. Is that what's going to happen under Carney? Of course not. This bill C-69 was part of his agenda. carbon taxes were part of his agenda. Oh, I've already got rid of the consumer part of the carbon tax, but I've doubled down on the industrial part of the carbon tax, which is just hidden. It's just out of sight, out of mind. I'm not going to tell you about it. This is going to continue, and the Carney, when he wins, what he's going to accomplish is he will be manufacturing more poverty, more homelessness, more drug addiction. That's what we're up for at least another 4+ years, because I don't see where we're going to find a conservative leader who can show any spunk and any leadership whatsoever other than hair on fire, things are bad, and how could you possibly vote for the other guy? You want to know what's going on in the world, not just Canada. Look to logistics companies. Always look to logistics company and give you a good insight into what's going on economically. I've been here in Calgary, as I said, and I'm meeting with lenders and different people from the community, and 100% of them in the last couple of days have said, "Hey, Scott, do you have any experience in the trucking and logistics business? Because we got a lot of loans in our portfolio that we're worried about." Lenders are freaked out. Logistics companies are struggling. Article in the Globe and Mail: Canada's biggest trucking company says the trade war is hammering truckers. TFI International says that the American trade war is hammering some of its freight volumes and fueling uncertainty to the point where it had to walk away from major takeover opportunities. It's scaling back. In other words, it's focusing, which is what you need to do in business when you're in a crisis. Trump administration has imposed tariffs on imports in dozens of countries, and the fog about this trade policy intentions are hitting businesses across North America, forcing companies to pull financial guidance and reshape their strategy. And you see that first in, so long before you have the financial reporting and the comments of the CEOs of whatever company, you see this on the logistics side, which is why, as an investor, if you want to know what's going on in the economy, you should always look to that. TFI says that they transport goods that are oversized and require unique handling, and it has been, quote, really affected because our end customers are sitting on the fence waiting to see where all of this goes. It's not just trucking. It's not just trucking. You know, there with the tariff regime, the National Retail Federation in the U.S. projects a 20% drop in containerized U.S. imports in the latter half of 2025. 20% of containers coming into U.S. ports is what they are projecting, following the 10% and the 145% tariffs on everybody else and China, respectively. And that would be one of the few, not just the largest, but one of the only declines in global container port volume since 1979. You believe that? Since 1979. The executive director of the Port of Los Angeles is forecasting a 10% decline in cargo volumes right now, which is attributed to inventory adjustments and changing supply chains. Shipping giant Hapag Lloyd reports a 30% cancellation rate, of U.S. orders from China due to tariff uncertainties. Although there's an increase in container shipments to Europe, particularly UK, Germany, and Netherlands. I read somewhere that Belgium is becoming a hub. And what's going on is all these Chinese exports that can't go to America because there'll be 145% tariff. No one wants this stuff, is now going to Europe, and those ports are increasing in volume. So that's interesting. As I said, you want to know what's going on in the world during a period of uncertainty. You look to logistics, and that will be a good guide for your economy. What do we have right now? We have chaos. There's over the internet. There's just video after video circulating social media right now of Chinese ports that are effectively empty. It's really interesting what's going on. Speaking of trade wars and tariffs and all that stuff, from the Wall Street Journal, Apple, Meta are fined by the EU. This is the European Union come up with crazy laws, and it gives them an excuse to do a cash call on big tech from America, and they do it maybe twice a year, once a year, and that's what this is, with made up laws and made up issues. Wall Street Journal reports the EU has fined Apple and Meta platforms hundreds of millions of dollars and ordered the companies to comply with tech rules in a move that risks ratcheting up tensions with the Trump administration. This has nothing to do with tariffs in the Trump administration. They were going to, and they have historically done this anyways, because it's just why would you not get, what did they find them here? $570 million for Apple alone for allegedly breaching the bloc's Digital Markets Act. And it fined Meta another 200 million euro. I would probably, I don't know, 250, $300 million. So you're approaching $750 million. Good morning, Ion. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you take advantage of that RFP in Seattle I talked about right off the top of the show. So about $750 million on Apple and Meta for whatever this Digital Markets Act is. And it has nothing to do with tariffs. This is just a cash call. They're able to take this money and apply it to their deficits and their spending and social programs. The commission also issued cease and desist orders that could have a bigger impact than the fines. One order targets Apple's App Store, and the other takes aim at Meta's use of personalized ads, important revenue streams for each company. Again, it's referring to tariffs, but that's not what's going on here. The sanctions against the two companies are the first under the Digital Markets Act, a law that was passed in 2022 to help smaller companies compete with the large tech behemoths. Do you think that's going to work? That's not going to work. The breaches of the law carry a potential fine, listen to this, of up to 10% of the company's global revenue. It has nothing to do with what's going on in the EU. They just say, oh, look at Apple. This is your global revenue. I can fine you up to 10% of that under my crazy law because I just want to do cash calls all the time to deal with my financial issues. Where are we here? We're 25 minutes in, more or less. But this is a Friday. I'm going to go home. I need to pack, get the hell out of here. So thank you for listening. I'm going to call it short today. Remember, our theme for 2025 is defense wins championships. We will see you Monday. Let me see if I have any comments or questions from anybody. No, we are all good. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you Monday. This has been Mornings with Scott.